Mark Walsh here from Embodied Yoga Principles. So I want to show you two fairly juicy, often provocative Embodied Yoga Principles postures today. One is called Sex Kitten. This was invented by my wife and comes primarily from tango. And the other one is called Vulnerability Posture. Sometimes we call it Innocence Posture. And this is one that's taken from a classical Iyengar posture and changed slightly. The first thing with Sex Kitten to say is that you can be sexy in a lot of ways. Obviously, it depends on who you are and the polarity between two people. However, this is a particular posture for exploring what we might call predatory sexuality. There tends to be a lot of gender conversations come up, and I want to be really clear that we're not saying you should do this, men should or shouldn't, we're not saying that women should or shouldn't, it's just to say this is part of the range of being human. And I'm joined today by Tonya and Katharina, and I happen to know one of them likes it and one of them doesn't, so we'll sort of see some of that at play here. It's certainly one that's taken me a little while to get used to. It looks a little bit of something like this. So if you're doing this, notice if you go to humor, that can be a kind of way out of it. It's very asymmetrical. So it's a kind of side-on posture, and the breathing's with the mouth, you're looking with the eyes, and it's the hip is cocked. So that's quite difficult for a lot of guys often. You'll see it in Egyptian dance, that hip one way or the other. People have slight different variations of this, but it's not like a structurally sound, balanced posture. That's the point, actually. There's a more guy-like version. You'll see something like, I always use the example of Joey from Friends, and he's kind of like, hey, how you doing? Yeah? Or you'll see this in French men, they'll be like, blah, 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 blah. Or Brazilian men, you'll see, will be like, oi linda, tudo bem, você, gostosa. Yeah, it's like a cultural pattern in some, you like that one, don't you? It's a cultural pattern in some cultures, in men as well as women, but it's certainly in Russia, it's quite gendered, is that fair to say? I'm in Russia today, by the way. So if we do it once more, taking the side angle, how does it feel? Is it familiar? Is it not so familiar? Is it disowned even? How do you find this one, Tonya?
That's kind of familiar, and I can do it different ways, different directions.
You want to show us some variations? You're probably better at this than me.
I have like the
Oh, okay, but that's a little bit of enthusiasm posture in there too, yeah.
Maybe other side.
And you can walk like this, right? Like I once saw my wife just walking down the street, and she was just like sassing her way down the street. I bumped into her. I didn't realize she was in town that day, and she had a black leather jacket and her hair. And she's just looking at me like this, and I'm like, wow, that's my wife. Oh my God, you know? It's crazy. Like it was like, whoa, it like hit me, you know? And how do you find this one?
It's not easy for me to take this posture all of a sudden, so I need to think something maybe about my tango practice, and so then to put myself in a mood to do this posture.
Yeah.
But once I'm in, I feel comfortable. I feel.
So you get into it, yeah. And remember, we're not saying you should be like this. We're just saying it's one way of being, and it's only one aspect of sexuality. Usually the mouth breathing helps, or being engaged with the mouth. The tissues of the mouth and the genitals are very similar tissues, and like something like biting, chewing the mouth, kind of getting involved. And that angularity, that side facing is kind of key to it. You can think of this as a very adult posture, which is healthy. More childlike posture would be vulnerability posture. So should we give that a go? Would you mind showing as an Iyengar yoga teacher, would you mind showing where it came from? So the Iyengar yoga posture is a little bit different. So the Iyengar posture is a bit of a twist. And the first time I did this, I was with my teacher, Iyengar teacher, and I was just like, what the hell is this? I don't want to do this. You know, my whole system was like, no way. And that's because of my personality. And then we fine-tuned it a little bit, so we changed it to this kind of like gentle touch on the knee, toes, nose, hands all in the same direction. And sometimes I give the example, imagine you're like a shy child, and someone was just giving you a kiss on the cheek, maybe. And you're maybe like a kind of young girl, and there's a knight in shining armor, and you know, you're just kissing you on the cheek like that. There's a sweetness to it. I really like this now, but the first time I did it, I hated it. I was like, I can't do this one. Yeah, there's a sort of tenderness to it. And again, it's asymmetrical, that's deliberate. It's very different from, you know, something like karate sitting, right? Macho, yeah? So this kind of sweet, tender quality, for some people is very familiar. And I was coaching someone the other day, and there's a girl, and she was 28, but she seemed like 16. And she said, why can't I get a man? I'm like, because you look like a kid. because she had a habitual way of doing this continuously, which was just making her childlike. And I felt like very fatherly towards her, but she didn't, have that. I didn't have a response like from someone that has the one we just did, the sex kitten one, because it's a much more childlike position, and it's a much more sort of sweet, tender position, which is good sometimes, but it wasn't what she was looking for in life as a 28-year-old. How do you find this one, Tonya?
It's kind of familiar.
Yeah.
Calm posture, but but I can now use another way of
because this has traditionally been like one of your main modes, hasn't it? But you've built your range over the last few years.
Yeah, and also it is cultural. We have in Russia this
You'll see it in The Little Mermaid, you'll see it in a lot of art, actually, classically represented, usually with women, but not always. There is a gendered association, particularly historically, in certain cultures around this one as well. There's a certain sort of sweetness to it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything you want to say about it?
I wasn't aware before that I'm using this posture so much. And after I started to be more aware with studying embodied yoga principles.
Sorry.
I was investigating at the Milongas how it works, how the sexy kitten works, how the
vulnerability. It's okay, your English is better by Russian. How does it work? And you'll see people will really use these two. They'll turn them on. It's like, Daddy, can I have some pocket money? And it's the sex kitten one of like, trying to get what you want with sexuality, male or female. And to be a bit more conscious around if you're doing that habitually all the time. I have had students as well that continuously did like sex kitten, and it could get them into trouble. It wasn't a way of operating throughout daily life. Yeah. And it's just something that do you know people like that?
I just mentioned that in people, and sometimes it's really like misunderstanding because of you are going like, hey.
Yeah. I find that when I'm in Brazil, the entire culture has it, and I'm like, whoa, So it's one to be, careful with, and but also to be able to step into. Like I see a lot of students reject it and say, well, I'm going to reject it because I don't want to have to be like that, which is fair enough. If culture said you have to be this way, but then actually they lose some of their range, they lose some of their choice, they lose some of their freedom, and there may be a time and a place for it, that is absolutely appropriate. So, bear in mind, I'd advise teachers not to just start playing with these. If you're a yoga teacher watching this video, I was quite amazed the other day that I put a video up and a few people said, I'm going to try that tonight in class. I was like, oh, hang on. So these are two things that can really trigger a lot. So particularly if you're not like trauma sensitive trained or psychologically trained, I would really, really recommend not just playing with these with students. They can be quite emotional, and there's been times in EYP workshops when a lot of shit has come up doing these two. You've seen that, right? It's quite full on. So I hope this has been useful. Give them a try though yourself at home and see what's familiar, see which you might want to grow into. So I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, you can subscribe to the channel, hit the bell. More importantly, however, get the newsletter. So the newsletter you do, is that right? In the box here? Okay. So why you would want the newsletter, so you hear about the best videos, so you actually ask me questions, you can reply to the newsletter, I'll reply. You can hear about events, teacher trainings, other things that are happening, and stay in touch more reliably. So newsletter there.